Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk. Light Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning, this is Stan in Gainesville, and today we are discussing hard and soft block cues, Martin demos, stage versus architectural design, and talent versus technology. A lot of binary stuff going on, all on Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the original Lumen Brothers.
Just in time for Christmas.
Well, Xmas is actually next week, isn't it? Or the week after, something like that. But it's Hanukkah time.
Krampus is like 5 days away.
Oh, Krampus, right, the Krampus.
And Festivus is also upon us.
Yeah, Festivus for the rest of us. So, welcome everyone to episode 244. And as you hear in the background, we have our original Lumen brother Stan with us again. And it's good to have you back with us, Stan.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all.
All right, so Stan, you're here, and we missed you at LDI. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, man, I really wanted to be there. But
Yeah, did you like the show?
I did like the show. I thought you guys had a good time. It sounds like it was a lot of fun. You had a very enthusiastic crowd, from what I could tell.
We did. It was really probably the most enthusiastic crowd yet that we've had there. And I was really surprised.
That's because I stayed away. See what happens?
He said, Stan's on here. Everybody. No, they didn't do that.
Well, I'll be there next year, hopefully.
That being said, we would like to again once thank Lori Cooper and our Lumen brother, Brackley Freyer, for joining us. It was a wonderful, wonderful time that we had. And it was really an interesting conference, Stan. I think you would have really enjoyed it.
I have a question. So who's the gentleman who, I thought, by the way, that idea of, first of all, I was very touched that you had a little picture of me in the glass. No, I know, on the cup. I know
No,
you
we
did.
didn't.
I know you didn't. But I am curious about the gentleman who won, is going to be a host. What was his name and when is he coming?
That is Jordan. He's one of Brackley's BFA students, I believe.
Yes.
And he'll be joining us when he and Brackley are available, which I assume will be sometime in January, early February at the latest. Certainly this season, before we kick off our 200th season.
Our 200th season. You mean our 6th season. Anyway, let's get started today. And we're going to start off with some industry news. News. There it goes. First of all, we should pause for a minute because we taped last show before we heard about the death of Stephen Sondheim. I believe we taped it on Tuesday, and I believe he passed away on Thursday, on Thanksgiving Day. And so we didn't leave that out. I mean, we didn't do it intentionally, but he was a giant, a total giant in our industry, and for culturally he was as well. And we're going to actually devote our Let's Talk About segment as a tribute to Stephen. And some of us have met him, and we all have stories about doing Sondheim shows. It's an incredible experience, but we'll talk about that more later in the show. But also in the news, our friend Brad Schiller from Martin informed us about the Martin New York City residency that will be happening in December. I believe it's like the 9th to the 16th. There'll be 8 days, and they're going to be doing their product demos, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is they're going to have a weekend of learning, December 11th and 12th, with many masters of lighting providing informational talks. And I believe that include what? Peggy Eisenhower, Don Holder, Ken Ken Billington, Mike Baldessari, Jeff Kreuter, Scott Tunzing, Bradley King, John Viesta, Luther Frank. Hey, our old friend Luther. Carrick Goldman, and Ben Stanton. So anyone who's interested, here's the website you get more information. It's called martinnyc.rsvpify.com. That's martinnyc.rsvpify.com. Okay? So that being said, that's about all that's happened, right?
Yep.
Unless something happens between now and Saturday that we don't know about because we've already taped the show, and then we're going to look like idiots again. But hey, that's not the first time we've looked like idiots. So anyway, Stan has our first listener question.
Yeah, it comes from Shelley in Oregon, and she says, I'm a theatrical designer who's getting into architectural lighting. What are the differences that I need to learn? I got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quick points for you, Shelley. First of all, simple. Light is light. It's still light. It still behaves the same way you know from the theater, so light is not going to change the way it behaves. I would say this, if you think we have a lot of products in theatrical lighting, it's nothing compared to the number and range of products in architectural. There's so much competition. So a lot of the design, sort beyond the aesthetics, you really got to know your products. So I would say start really taking a look on the websites and getting to know the products in architecture that are different. Measurements matter, so you got to get your head around, lumens and lux and luminance and illuminance and all of that stuff. So you want to take a look at lighting metrics. And lately, I've been doing. Some of you may know I've gone back to AutoCAD, and I'm sort of like saying, "Boy, I wish I had never left this software."
And why are you going back?
I'm not going to. People know my opinion.
But for the people who haven't been listening to us, why are you going back?
Because okay, let me invoke Campbell Shaw here. Campbell is one of our Light Talk listeners, and he's 14, and he's a little bit of a genius. And he sent me an email one day, and he said, "Listen, I'm thinking about buying some softwares, and I've kind of used the educational versions of a lot of different things." And he said, if you were going to put down your money and you were starting all over again, what would you do? And that really gave me pause. So I sat back and I thought about it for a couple of days. And I said, if I was starting over again, I started in AutoCAD. And in the early 2000s, I moved to MiniCAD with AutoPlot, Sam Jones's plugin, and which then converted and evolved into Spotlight in Vectorworks. And I did that because I had to, because my industry, the theatrical lighting industry, adopted that software. And I lament having to leave AutoCAD, because AutoCAD is pretty great. And it's all over the world, and it's in every industry. And so if I was starting over again, I couldn't have, of course, because of the way things evolved, but I would have. But I lament that I ever left AutoCAD. So now I'm back into AutoCAD. And I have to say, it's damn good software. It's just damn good software. And so lately, when I lay out a light plot for a consulting job, it's a traditional theatrical light plot, but it has to be read by people outside of our industry. So I was looking for a way to make my theatrical light plot look like what electrical engineers do. They do layouts as well. They call them a reflected ceiling plan, which is just like if you put a mirror on the floor, what would you see in the mirror looking up at the ceiling? That's sort of what a light plot is too. So I found this software I want to tell you about called 2DED Electrical. And it's a plugin for AutoCAD, and it has all the beautiful tools that electrical engineers use to do lighting layouts. So I'm getting my head around that, and it's pretty inexpensive. You can buy it by the month for $20, or you can buy it for the year for $197. It creates in AutoCAD, they call them ribbons, not palettes, as opposed to Vectorworks. And I'm really loving it, like connecting the fixtures, labeling fixtures in the way it uses the same nomenclature and the same look that EEs or electrical engineers use. So I think that's going to help you. And when I did my residencies out in California, David remembers at Lighting Design Alliance, with Chip Israel's firm, I really got to see how they put their work together. So it's the same but different, and the styles are different. So I would say you might want to learn that And I can put up the link to the 2D ED stuff for people who want to take a look at that. And there is a free demo. So that's enough for me to say. I'm curious what you guys have to say.
Well, one thing that you have to learn is definitely the difference between working with a master electrician and an electrical engineer, and the electricians on site, because that's a totally different thing. And of course, the amount of time that it takes to get a project finished, completed. It's not unusual that it could take years to get from the start of the project until the time where your job is finished, when you finally focus and set all the lighting. And of course, the beauty of it lasting forever. And every time you drive past that building, you can say, well, that's my lighting. Why aren't they changing the lamps? Why are they putting the wrong color lamps in? Why? Oh my God, it looks like crap.
Yeah, maintenance is a big thing. And
guess what? You have no recourse. Once you walk away, you have, unless it's in your contract.
It's in your contract, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The most rigorous architectural lighting contract I ever saw was for Disney. And Chip's work, Chip Israel's firm, where they do a lot of big stuff all over the world. And I think they've got a lot of Vegas stuff. And they'll have very specific maintenance schedules and things that have to be done. I think they even get brought in every couple of years to do a walkthrough and give notes.
That's great. Yeah.
Depends on the level of prestige that you have.
I would just, say the same thing that I tell theatrical designers, and that is you have to be aware of the human factor when you're lighting. Mm-hmm. You have to be aware of, an understanding of the psychology, understanding of our body, how we respond to different conditions, how our vision works, how our perception works, how color works. I was just in Las Vegas, and that's a master class in lighting there.
Yeah.
Just stand someplace and look at the stuff that looks like crap, and then look at the stuff that's really well done, mm-hmm. and see if you can tell the difference. And you have to be observant. And to that end, I would say you got to know something about your history of architecture, the electric light, daylight. Who are the great designers? Who are the great architects mm-hmm. working in lighting, mm-hmm. and what makes them great? So I think you've got to get nuts and bolts are important. I agree totally, but if you're going to make your mark and be more than just kind of a nuts and bolts person, what makes you a really great artist in architectural lighting?
Yeah, let me because Steve pointed that out. Howard Branston has a wonderful book on that, Learning to See, that he talks, and he came from the theater. He talks so much about that, the artistry of it. And I think Steve's right. You can look. Who's been posting pictures lately of bad architectural lighting on the Facebook group, right? I mean, it's really true what Steve says. When you see a good one, you kind of know it's really good, and they really stand out as good. Chip's firm does a lot of cheesecake factories, which we don't have so much on the East Coast, but you go to a cheesecake factory, that's Lighting Design Alliance. It's beautifully done. Every detail is thought about. And it's a restaurant, but they're just phenomenal environments.
When Stan is right, he's right. I went to a really nice restaurant in Las Vegas and had a wonderful, book a table 3 hours at a time. And it was really well lit. And it was comfortable, and the lighting was just right, and it really enhanced the meal. There was just nothing out of place about the architecture, the decoration, or the lighting. And there's a place that has to worry about not only atmosphere, but there are huge safety concerns that they have to factor into their lighting design. Duff in the Netherlands writes, what is a hard block versus a soft block in queuing? Is one better than the other? Well, I don't know that one is better than the other. They serve two different masters there. I think if you're going to think about blocking cues, you need to understand a little bit about tracking. And tracking is one of those things that you take a young designer and say, let's do some tracking. And you see the fear come over their face because they know the tracking is going to destroy their show and they'll never figure out where they went wrong. Basically, tracking refers to how a lighting console determines playback for lights that are turned on in one cue and then not modified in the next cue. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. It's been a few years, but the reference that you can always kind of throw in the back of your mind about tracking are all those men and women who ran auto transformer dimmers. So tracking is tracking changes and where they come in a cue. Now blocking, again, blocking kind of strikes fear in people's hearts because they think of a blocking cue. Where young designers usually put a blocking cue as in a blackout, and they think, oh yeah, I can put it right there and it'll take care of everything, because you do get into tracking, and if you're not careful, you will track a little stray light into a blackout, and that's where you normally see it. The thing about a soft block is that a soft block does not force channel values into a cue itself. It simply tags them, or some people say it flags those items as being blocked. And then those channels are activated for recording, usually in the hard value way. But the other soft block channels are more ghost-like. The benefit of a soft block is that the blocking of the cue or the specific channels can be reversed fairly painlessly on a higher end console. Did that make sense to anybody at all?
So I think I want to ask the question because I'm not 100% clear. I think I understand what a hard block is. Like at the end of a scene, you record the cue as a block. Nothing is going to track forward, moving forward from that cue.
Yeah, you can go back.
And if I'm understanding what Steve is saying, that a soft block would allow you to bring a particular channel that was flagged back in, should you choose to.
That is succinctly said, yes. So just ignore everything I've said. We'll go with that answer right there. Okay. The other thing about...
I've never used one. Are they available on all consoles now? Can you give it... maybe like I haven't programmed anything in a while, but like how is it on? Is it in the EOS world? Is it in the Grand MA world? Is it in the Hog world?
Absolutely. Everybody has it.
Okay.
And I think you bring up a good point. If you want to read a really good paper about block cues, you can go to the ETC website.
Yes,
and
I've read it.
Valentino wrote a really interesting paper. The thing about block cues and soft block cues, where we get into trouble is we start putting things at zero. So I'm sitting there and maybe the board operator doesn't hear me correctly, or I say something incorrectly. I bring up a cue. I'm looking at something. I say, let me have channels 1 through 10 at full. And I look at that and go, oh, no, 1 through 10 at 0. And the board operator types in 1 through 10 at 0. They've now blocked that. They've put a hard
that's
zero.
A hard zero. That's a hard value.
Zero there.
Yeah.
So I mean so you want to also take a look at your console and see what they have there. Usually it's going to be an undo or release or remove key or a
it's
clear
like you
key.
just say take them out as opposed to put them at 0.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea about a blocking cue, if you're going to use a blocking cue in your cue stack, good place to put one is at the top of the show, right after the preset. Put it right there, and then you start with a clean palette, so to speak. Atop of the scene, the same way. That stops the previous scene from creeping into Act 1, Scene 2, or whatever. If you're doing a musical, that big transition cue, where all of a sudden you have to go to black on stage, and then you bring up a pool of light on a dancing Hamlet or something, you want to block that so that doesn't track into your next cue. And dead blackouts, that's always a good place to put
and that's the first thing I do before I write a show is I write in all the block cues. I know what they are. I know the numbers and make them block cues.
Well, you bring up a good point, David. And that is fundamentally, as a designer, you need to have an idea of what you want to be blocked.
Steve, you gave great examples of all those examples of block cues I get. Can you give an example of where you would use a soft block and why?
When I want to release something out of that cue. So I'm not taking it out. I've just got it kind of holding standby for me to come back. I think the thing about blocking and soft block is it's pretty fast. I think if we're working kind of in preset mode, the thing that's difficult about that, in preset mode, everything you're doing is dependent upon a single time.
Right.
Whereas with a tracking console, I can have multiple times running. I can have channels running, I have effects running, I have all this stuff running. So ultimately, tracking console is better, and the way to manage that tracking console is through blocking I wouldn't use blocking in busking. I would not do that. I think that would be kind of a dangerous thing to do.
Make a lot of surprises when you're expecting one thing and you don't get it, or vice versa. Because you're not riding through a stack like in a cue stack. You're just you're improvising. I'm not a busker.
It's an improv.
So,
I'm not either, nor am I a programmer. So everything I say about blocking and hard blocking, soft blocking, I'm saying it right now. I may be totally wrong.
The lawyers will protect you, David. Don't worry.
All I know is that I put block cues at every transition and certainly every blackout. And you got to make sure that you never black out the conductor or the orchestra. You can park those channels, or you can record them into that block cue, but you never want to do anything like that. Maybe that's where a soft block would work. I don't know.
Well, and at the end of the recording session, you also go back and clean all that stuff up.
Yeah,
and clean it up very easily where you have a soft block. I think ETC, and I don't really know ETC consoles that well. I think that's what they call it, an auto block. I think that's their little B.
Auto block.
Puts up a little B on your console as opposed to a big B.
Well, I have to tell you something.
What?
Everybody listen closely.
I'm listening.
You are listening to Light Talk. And today, Light Talk is sponsored by
Suck No More Industries and My Little Secret. Has this ever happened to you? At Tech, you bring up a goofy light cue. It's not just bad, it's really bad.
How bad is it?
It's so bad, you need My Little Secret. My Little Secret is the autonomous console add-on that senses you're about to make a fool of yourself and deletes that cue before anyone can see it. Now, you might be asking yourself, what about actor safety? I can't just black out the stage. Well, kittens, My Little Secret substitutes a gentle blue wash on stage and keeps everyone safe. Problem solved. And at $49.95, it's the bargain of the season. Just remember, when My Little Secret engages, stand up and shout out in a loud, clear voice, "Hey, what's up with this console? That's not my cue. Are you using tracking?" And for only $19.95, Suck No More will toss in Happy Accident. Happy Accident is the console add-on that makes random presets and palettes just for you. Don't know what to do for Sugar Plum? Just push Lucky Macro 7 and Happy Accident makes you look like a genius. Or not. My Little Secret and Happy Accident, because you need all the help you can get. Shipping now in time for the Nutcracker season.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those rabid ducks tells us once again that it's time for Let's Talk About. And today, we are doing a very special LTA about Stephen Sondheim. And like I said in the opening, we taped the show before he passed away. But today we're going to spend about 10 minutes talking about what Sondheim and his art meant to us as designers. So let's start off. Stan, why don't you tell us something about how Stephen Sondheim has affected your life and design?
I have two short stories. So when I was a young strapping man, and I was at Brooklyn College in New York, we had a theater in the basement. And these were the days when you did all-nighters. And forget about that, no more 10 out of 12s. We did 24 out of 24. And we were doing a little show in the early 80s that had gotten really well-known called Company. And it was a simple set. We had a very talented director named George Kroom. I don't know if he listens to this show. He's out there in New York still doing work. And terrific actors. And a 24-channel 2-scene preset. And I had follow spot made out of 360 cues, probably on a platform somewhere. So it was sort of that kind of low-budget thing. But the music was great, and George was a wonderful arranger. And at the end of that show, that's one of my favorite Sondheim songs. I have got a few, but Being Alive. And I was a really young designer, and I had some good mentors. And I just remember I was so emotionally moved by that song. It was so clear what to do. And so in each verse, I had like a cue on stage, and it's Bobby, right? And he's walking downstage from upstage right to downstage left on each verse on a diagonal. He's getting closer and closer to the audience, making that sort of personal connection, really, really spilling out his heart to the audience. And I just remember at every verse, I took a system out. And I took a system out, and I took a system out, and I just peeled away the light until then he was just in the follow spot. And then on each line in the last verse, the spot very slowly got a little smaller, a little smaller, a little smaller, more and more intimate, till it was down to a headshot and his outstretched arm and practically touching the people in the first row. And I got goosebumps from the music, from the light, from the intimacy, from his ability to bring the character and the depth of the psychology of his life to that audience. And I'll never forget it. And I still think about it now, and I still get goosebumps. When I listen to that song, I still see it in my head, that little college production. And my other one is the opposite, which was, I think people forget. I forgot that he wrote the music and lyrics to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And, and I did a big production of that one, but it was in Hawaii. And it's such a misogynistic play, really, when you think about it. And this was in Hawaii with people and women who were gladly, dressed. It was very, I think about it now, boy, oh boy. But I really enjoyed the lighting of it, and I really enjoyed the music, and it was a big production numbers, and it had a lot of power, but it was also, through today's lens, I don't know if people are doing it very much these days. But those are my two Sondheim experiences, and I'm just how could we not be touched by that work? And I've seen some of the stuff, on Broadway as well, and people have compared him to Shakespeare, and that's probably not hyperbole.
Well, I don't know about that comparison to Shakespeare. I'm going to compare him to Stanley Kubrick. If you look at the films of Stanley Kubrick, what a wide range of work, and he mastered every genre. Take a look at the works of Stephen Sondheim. I mean, he was nominated 18 times for the Drama Desk. He won it 8. But when you look at the 8 wins, Company, Follies, A Little Night Music, Sweeney Todd, Merrily We Roll Along, Sunday in the Park with George, he got the Pulitzer for that too. In the Woods, and Passion. Can that be 8 more different works? And then, the people don't think about it who are not in our industry, but he also took an Academy Award for Dick Tracy and Best Song, Sooner or Later. I mean, there was nothing that, from an outsider looking in, it seems to me there was nothing he couldn't succeed at. He just had such an understanding of the message he was trying to get across on stage. And we also forget about his ties to West Side Story.
He wrote the lyrics of that. He was the librettist at 26 years old.
And at 24, he was an apprentice to
Oscar Hammerstein.
Oscar Hammerstein.
Right. Yeah. That was his mentor.
He might have been young. He might have been younger. He might have been in the early 20s.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is.
I was thinking when I heard that he was like 26 when he wrote the libretto for West Side Story, I was thinking about this film that's now showing on Disney Plus about the Beatles, Let It Be. And do you realize that film, all those guys are like Paul McCartney's at 26. He's 26 there. None of them are over 30. So you think about this amazing talent that Sondheim had. And very much like the Beatles, to be able to produce work like that at such a young age. And he never stopped. That's the most amazing thing. He never stopped. He was still doing shows.
I think Steve's points are well taken.
Yeah.
The range of work is really extraordinary.
Absolutely. And that was basically what I was going to say. Sweeney Todd, Company, Pacific Overtures, Passion, Into the Woods, West Side Story. And it goes on and on. His music, especially... what am I thinking of? Help me.
Little Night Music.
Yes, thank you.
We just closed that here at UF.
Yeah, I did it about 7 or 8 years ago in Central City, and we also did it somewhere else. I forgot where it was. But anyway, it was just, that music is just amazing.
It was funny. The students here did not want to do it. They were against it. They said it's old, it's this, it's tired. And then our director had some mentorship from Stephen Sondheim. They knew each other. Because he was very giving. That's something we should mention about anybody who wrote to him, anybody who called him, he was always available to people. And so my director here at UF was working on his thesis on Sondheim, and he emailed him, said, yeah, when you're in New York, come to my house. Went to his apartment, had dinner. But he did the show, and after the show, the students realized what a fantastic piece it was.
Right.
But they couldn't see it. They just didn't want to do it. And then he made them do it because he's the professor. He's like, you don't understand. You're gonna appreciate this. And then they did, of course, once it got on stage.
It's hard to do that show with young people, though, I must say, because it's about growing old.
It is.
Having young people doing songs about growing old, it's really hard for those actors to pull that off. But it's great when you do it with professional musical theater artists, because then that show really works.
Well, also, his stuff is not the easiest stuff in the world to sing either.
No, it's not. That's why it was done here. Yeah.
Patti LuPone was interviewed on, I believe it was on Morning Joe, and she was talking about how difficult it was and how hard Stephen Sondheim was on her, even until recently, that he gave her really hard notes. She said sometimes insulting, but then I was realizing that he was right. So
that may harken back to his time with Hammerstein. Because I was reading a little article about this. He presented his first musical to him.
Wow.
He said, I've got this musical. What do you think of it? And it was called By George. And he said he got a master class in how terrible it was. But he learned so much from having it critiqued by someone who was really capable.
That's kind of refreshing to know that Stephen Sondheim wrote something terrible. And then he got so good. So that's a wonderful
And then
story.
he did West Side Story.
And then he did West Side Story. He goes, you're not ready for the
Well,
music,
he was working
kid.
with Lenny Bernstein, so it wasn't too shabby a team there either.
No, these are not two hacks. So, but he was 26. That's amazing. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, well, some people are born with certain things. It gets to your question later, about talent. Some people are born with certain abilities, and he certainly had that. He found this niche, and he was mentored by somebody. But somebody was writing that. He didn't write in the style of Hammerstein. He forced us to change the way what we expect when we listen to musical theater.
Absolutely.
He changed the sound of musical theater, and we had to change our ears in a way to hear him. He didn't, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't just become another Hammerstein, right? You don't come out whistling the melody. It's not like, Oklahoma,
Well,
it's
first
a different
of all,
sound.
who else could get away with writing Assassins? A musical.
Yeah, that was one I wasn't in love with myself, frankly. But
it's actually a very good show. But again, who could get away with that? Except for Stephen
Sondheim. He was being
Sondheim.
himself. He was being who he was. That's the key.
Well, he brings a different style of writing in. He gets us away from what Rodgers and Hammerstein and Kern were doing, which is that American mythic musical, and takes us in a direction Andrew Lloyd Webber is going to do with the direction he's going to take musicals. There's two divergence there of what a musical can be, and neither one are shabby.
Yeah, agreed.
In 1994, I had the opportunity and honor to light a show for PBS. It was a tribute to Stephen Sondheim. It was made for TV. It was done, actually, believe it or not, at SMU. It was produced there in the Bob Hope Theater, and Bill Eckhart did the scenery. I did the lighting. It was a huge all-star cast: Bernadette Peters, Deborah Monk, Chip Zien. They were singing all the songs in tribute of him. And it was an amazing experience because I was fortunate to meet the man. And it wasn't anything long, but I was like, oh my God, this is like the king of musicals. And he only got better. He only got better. So our love and our tribute to Stephen Sondheim. We will miss you. And it's a shame that we all want another musical. What can I say? But we have such a library of music from this man.
I spent the evening on Apple Music listening to the Sondheim Essentials.
Yeah, it could go to Essentials and they'll buy 800 songs or something like that. It's unbelievable the amount of work that this man has produced. So anyway, we will miss him.
We're very thankful for Stephen Sondheim.
We will miss him.
Well, it seems that David has our last question today.
Oh, yes. And this is a very interesting question. Jesse in Houston asks, I am so tired of hearing how artistically talented some designers are. How important is artistic talent in relation to technical ability? So I guess the question is artistic talent versus technical ability. How much artistic talent do you need and how much technical ability do you need?
Like she wants a percentage?
I think so.
Is she looking for numbers here, Jesse?
I say 70-30. What do you guys think?
Well, first of all, I think you have to define. I'm going to jump in, and then Steve will wrap it up with something really wise. But I like Uta Hagen's definition of talent. She says, talent is a ready access to your emotional life. So I think if you can access your emotions and maintain your composure, right, and maintain your passion, which I think is hard, then that's talent. And frankly, so if you're so tied up that you can't feel, then it's hard to sort of access your emotional life. So I think you need that. And in lighting, I do think you need technical ability as well, or you need somebody alongside you who's really got that. But I couldn't draw a distinction about the ratio of one to the other. I think you need both. Some people probably have more of one than the other, and then I would just quote the Buddha and say you ought to have a balanced amount of each. You can also rebalance yourself. If you're weak technically and you have the open mind and motivated, you can learn. If you're not the most artistic person in the world, you can develop. That's what an educational environment is for. Is for strengthening the muscles that are not maybe the strongest in you. And I think everybody has artistic talent, some more or less, to each his own. Like you say, David, is individual. But I think people don't give themselves the opportunity to discover parts of themselves that they don't know. Let me just say, the word I would say is latent, abilities that are latent in someone.
Well, according to Ken Robinson, who was a brilliant man, the problem is that our education systems don't allow artistically talented people to flourish. And I think that's a real big problem. What do you think, Steve?
I guess it depends on what Jesse wants to do. I think, does technical ability outweigh artistic ability? And I would say no. You can be a really good programmer. You can be a really good electrician. You can be a lot of things, but that doesn't mean you see what's happening on stage. Nothing wrong with having technical ability, and I agree with everything that's been said, but I think you have to be able to see the show. And if you can't see the show, you're just kind of like everybody else. And as the New York Times says, perfectly adequate lighting. and that's not necessarily bad. It's just that you wonder what separates you from someone else.
Yeah. Can I add to, you used the word see the show, Steve. I would also add to that to feel the show. So then you can translate the way your emotional response to a choice. Right. So if you can't feel when that kid sang Being Alive, when I did that Sondheim thing, when I was in my 20s, I felt the show and I felt the emotion, and I was able to translate that into what could I do with the lights that I have control over. They were my paintbrushes. And so you do need, you absolutely don't need technical ability to feel the show. You need a heart. Right.
Maybe Jesse needs a score sheet. And, you figure out a score sheet for every cue, and you have the technical aspects of it that you can grade yourself on. Like I'm using this type of light, and that's the correct light to use. And then you also have another little category over there on every cue, and you look at illumination, you look at mood, you look at modeling.
Yeah.
And, selective focus, and you grade yourself. Okay, I got a 90 in programming. I got a 90 in illumination. I got a 75 in whatever, modeling, and I failed at selective focus because I didn't see where the audience should be looking at this moment. Everyone had the same value.
I want a category called heart.
Yeah.
And you don't have to tell anyone what your score is. You don't have to share that information with anyone, Jesse.
Who has time to score yourself while you're writing cues? I mean, really.
I don't know. I think you have to be critical of your own work.
Sure.
And you have to be honest. You don't have to tell your boyfriend or your husband or your wife. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to shame yourself in public. but you do need to figure out what's working and what's not quite working and why is it not working.
Well, it's like writing a bridge to a song. Is that bridge working? And that's your transition going to the next part of the song. So there you go. And what a wonderful way to end this conversation, all about music and Stephen Sondheim.
Are you comparing our theme song to Stephen Sondheim?
That we're hearing in the background? I think not. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids, not Sondheim, tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you decide to litigate, the musical law firm of Flett, Flox, Blair & Blair and their paralegal Snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we chat about more useless things and explore the crazy shenanigans in our industry.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.